Welcome on a Monday night to Generation Movie. We're back from both a technical problem and a holiday weekend. Thank you. I want to thank everybody for joining me. My name is J.W. Colwell. I am joined, as always, by my good friend and a person I've missed the last couple weeks. Just to chit
Aw.
chat. Just to chit chat. Rich Drees. Rich Drees, how you doing on this fine Monday night?
I'm doing great. Missed you too. Missed hanging out here for an hour and allegedly an hour and 15 minutes, but it always seems to go longer. Shooting the
We're
shit about
loquacious people.
different movies.
We're
Hmm?
loquacious people, my friend. We're loquacious.
That just means we can't shut the
Um,
fuck up.
I that's exactly what that means. Now, theoretically, we're on Instagram tonight for the first time. I don't know if that's gonna work. Apparently, I hear they're gonna cut us off at an hour, but that's fine. Whatever. We can be superseded. That's great. Let's get some comments. Say hi to everybody. Let's see. So cool you have the evil listed. Okay. Uh, Good evening, gentlemen. Glad to see you back. Hope all is well with you and yours. Yeah, it's been an interesting couple of weeks. Good evening, friends. Good evening, Ken McKernan.
Nice to see you again.
Hey, brothers. Hope you're doing well. Thank you very much, Sean Smithson. And have Cheeto says, "Welcome, boys. We're doing our best. Like I said, we're testing out some Instagram stuff. They're a little wonky, so we're gonna have to make it. We're gonna have to figure that out. So give me time. We're always we are a work in progress. Um, but I'll tell you what's not a work in progress, Rich, and I want to see what you feel about this. I'm going to tell you right now. I think this is one of those summers where I think people thought they knew what was happening at the box office, and then all of a sudden one movie hits, and then people go back
You
and get the fever again, right? They get the fever.
you might not
Um,
be wrong there.
they get the fever back, and then all of a sudden, we're at our fourth consecutive $100 million weekend for a summer that everybody was very much Chicken Little. The sky is falling. Um, we've had two movies open at over 100 million in the last 4 weeks, right? Despicable
Hmm.
Me 4 and Inside Out 2. We have a bunch of movies at the box office that are kind of just grinding, right? So right now we have about 8 movies that are over $100 million. I want to touch base with what you think. So if branded out 111 million as it is now on streaming, Garfield movie just missed out on 100 million at 91. The Fall Guy missed out on 100 million at 92. I think that's
Which is a shame. It was a lot of fun.
I
That
think I think that movie in about 3 years will be a movie that everybody goes, "What? Why'd we miss this? What happened? What was I?
I
Was I?
think.
I don't know.
I mean, we've talked a lot about how COVID has shifted some people's viewing habits about going to the movies. And I think in a pre-COVID world, that would have done much better.
I
I
I
think a lot
I
of people would
I,
have gone out,
wholeheartedly,
would have seen
I,
it,
I
and
wholeheartedly
then
agree.
would have helped carry it even further.
So let's see. 170 for Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, well deserved. Just went to video on demand this week.
And
You
this is
know,
all domestic, right?
yeah, this is all domestic.
Okay, not
But
worldwide.
it's doing well worldwide as well. So, but 170 domestic is pretty good for we're four sequels in now, three sequels in on the new reboot. So let's see, 184 for Bad Boys Ride or Die, and that's the one that I would talk to you and I go, if Bad Boys 2 can do 184 million dollars, what could Axel F have done?
I was just about to say. And what was the box office for Beverly Hills Cop Axel F? Oh, that's right.
Right,
Netflix
that's right.
decided to
They
shoot
went right
themselves
the
in the
next.
foot and not put it in the theaters.
They shoot themselves in the foot, but also like it's doing very well on the service. So I don't want to. I
Mhm.
don't want to say anything bad about it.
It's
It's just
worth
one. It's where I think it would have been great to see it on in a theater. I'm jealous of you for getting to do that.
it.
So Bad Boy is at 184. A Quiet Place is grinding along, right? It opened about 3 weeks ago. It's falling at a nice, not precipitous, like 40% every week or so. So that's at 115 million. Then you have this little movie, this the kind of like little engine that could thing called Inside Out 2, which is at $571 million.
Mm-hmm.
And it just had its third consecutive weekend above 18 million, or fourth consecutive weekend above 18 million. And it's only down 34% with another family movie in the vicinity of it. So, and then the other big movie that opened recently is Despicable Me 4, which is already at 210 million. Also, a big shout out, congratulations to that franchise as it crossed $5 billion. So Despicable Me and Minions, we may look at and go, woo, but it is the first animated franchise to cross $5 billion.
Oh, I was gonna say I was starting to lose you just there a little bit for the sound, but
okay, I'm sorry. Let's see. So The Evil is an underrated gem. Excellent. And then Maxine crashed and burned. Maxine wasn't predicted to do a lot of money. Pearl and X, they're for horror fans. They don't have a large budget. So you can say it crashed and burned, but in reality, none of them have done super great. So I'm not worried about Maxine. Maxine will find its place the same way X and Pearl did. And then, the other thing that has to be talked about this weekend, right, is this stuff. This has to be talked about. Long theater.
Okay, your sound's just gone out again. I'm sorry.
Really?
Yeah, you're fine, and then you
I don't. Okay, so let's try it again. Is it okay now?
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna leave it right there.
Okay, let me just make sure I'm not hearing something different than if people in the chat want to say I'm out of my mind.
Going in and out, or is it
kick in and out too? Let us know.
I fucking hate tech stuff. I hate tech stuff so much. I love movies and I love talking to you, but I hate tech stuff. I hate tech stuff.
I understand.
I hate tech stuff with a passion. Long Legs opened this weekend. Interesting. Really good movie in the vein of, I'd say, Silence of the Lambs 7 are the two that it most emulates and wants to be in it when it grows up and becomes a big serial killer film. It's a great movie. It's a great performance by Cage. Micah Monroe, who's in It Follows, is fantastic. And this movie shocked the world with a pretty big gross this week, Rich. It grossed $22 million over the weekend, which is the highest gross ever for a neon film.
True.
So, and it's on 2,500 screens, grosses $22 million. It's one of the big sleeper hits of the summer thus far. So I've been looking at the percentages, Rich, and the percentages are interesting to me. Before Inside Out 2 came out, we were tracking about 25% box office total from last summer to this summer. Once Despicable Me entered the fray, right, and we still have a couple of heavy hitters left. We have the cleanup hitter on the 26th that everybody is kind of getting ready to, galvanize and get behind, and everybody's got their tickets and everybody's ready to go. But it's now down to 60%. So it's only 16% off of last year. And considering there's not a ton in the pipeline and everything was kind of scattered and moved around, 16% is pretty good before we get to what I think is going to do better than expected, Twisters, right? I don't know why. It's going to do better than expected, because it's doing the exact opposite of whatever nostalgia reboot, whatever they do to do right. But for whatever reason, I think that movie's going to do better than everybody thinks it's going to do. You know what I mean? So I think we're in for shocking grosses this upcoming weekend, and then next weekend, sky's the limit for the box office.
Next weekend is insane. I would not be surprised if just Deadpool and Wolverine just pulls 200 million at the box office.
I'm going to go 250.
Oh, okay.
Let's go 250
because are playing rules here.
No, I'm going 250. No, we don't have to do prices right. At or below that. That's so hard. 250, and I'm saying 250 because 250. They've done a really aggressive campaign this week that I was watching on YouTube, where they're saying, "Yeah, bring the kids. Who gives a shit? They've already seen the first two." And it's all three of them saying it. Sean Levy, it's Hugh Jackman, and they're all saying, "Yeah, bring the kids. No matter what we're going to get."
Because I mean, you wouldn't see like Disney advertising this movie during the Kids' Choice Awards or anything like that.
No, but you can have like the way it was prefaced to them on YouTube. Somebody asked them a question like, "Do you think what do you think about the fact this is the first non PG-13 Marvel movie, and how is it going to affect the box office, and don't you think you're ruining it for kids?" And Ryan Reynolds shot back at interviewers like, "Most kids who talk to me at conventions or whatever have already seen Deadpool, so I don't know what you're talking about." And let's be honest, they should bring the kids this one along too. And Sean Levy's like, "I am not saying to bring the kids." And Ryan Reynolds is like, "Why not? They've already seen our other two movies. So fuck." I think it's not that wrong. Sky's the limit. I think there are some other slight movies that might do well as we head towards the fall, and all pacing towards the first week of September when we get Beetlejuice, right? So like the fall, there's nothing coming. There's nothing not coming out, right? The fall is full. We should be good with this fall, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think Alien Romulus has a chance to do well. They released the popcorn bucket today. That was ridiculous. It's a face hugger, as if anybody would want to eat out of a face hugger popcorn bucket. And then I was like, "Oh wait, you do, you idiot! You definitely do." And my wife looked at me and she goes, "You're not bringing that home." I'm like, "I'm definitely bringing it home."
It's gonna have to stay in the broadcast closet with you.
Yeah, it's gonna stay in the broadcast closet. But like, I think Alien Romulus has a chance. I think The Crow has a chance. I think some of these movies that are coming out in August.
You are very optimistic about The Crow.
I didn't say I'm gonna love it. I just said I think it has a shot. You know what I mean? I think, if we get past the first set of reviews and everybody's like, "I don't hate it," it might get to the point where it does okay. Yeah. I'm not saying it's going to gross $100 million. I'm just saying I think Alien has potential, because that's a franchise that everybody loves. That if we could get back to the magic, it would be great. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I'm a big Alien fan, so I'm excited about that. I remember seeing the original Crow and thinking that was wonderful and it had something to say, and everything since then really didn't. So I'm like, okay, this was perfect. Why are we going back and fiddling with perfection? Because as a society, we've kind of we've pushed the boundary of an R rating a little bit more, so we can do a little bit more with this.
Well, I've heard a lot of people also say that
interesting.
Basically with The Crow, it's like it's more closely resembling the comic book. Like, that the original Crow is kind of like an offshoot. Okay, so let's see. I'm not hearing issues on JW's end. And then somebody wrote, JW's audio stinks. He has a small echo also. Thanks, Ken. The sound is fading in and out. Is it? I think it's in our last couple. JW's muffled. He's hoping to a $300 million weekend. I'm hoping. I think 250 is nice. There is an echo. I don't know how to fix the echo. Don't know how to fix the echo. Maybe we'll do it that way. We'll try. I'm trying, guys. Hope The Crow does better than the Fall Guy, just like I hope the Hellboy does. Well, the upcoming Hellboy, Joe, that looks miserable. That looks like Sony trying to keep the Marvel license for Spider-Man. That movie reeks of just bad. It just looks bad to me.
Yeah. I'm disappointed in it because I think it needed more money to be able to do what it wants to do. And Mike Mignola, the creator of Hellboy, is heavily involved with this. So I think probably the story will be okay at least, but
it just doesn't. It lacks
wise. It might not be up to current standards. So whether that is a
well, and the let's be honest with the Hellboy franchise. Right. Let's be honest with the Hellboy franchise. We haven't been right since Del Toro lost the franchise. Right? It hasn't been, since we haven't been right since Ron Perlman put down the gun, and we didn't get the end of that particular trilogy that was so fun to watch with Selma Blair and Perlman, and they had good storylines going and everything was great. I just, this one looks blah. At least like the Harbor Hellboy was trying to add oomph. We added people. We tried to be big, and it just fell on its face. I just don't see the Hellboy trailer bugged me to no end. Like it was like it had all the I don't know, all the makings of we're downplaying Hellboy. It's like an Etsy Hellboy trailer. Timu. It's a Timu Hellboy. You know what I mean? Like it's like, oh, and it's gonna be like a private mansion ghost. That's great. Nobody gives a shit. Hellboy's been fighting golden armies, fucking giant robots, fucking tooth fairies. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like giant. It's
disappointing in a way that it's looking like any outside of Deadpool, any comic book adaptation we're getting this summer just is not exciting me from what I've seen so far. And granted, they could have had shitty trailers cut from what they, what material they have. And
yeah, I think, the comic, I think,
but it's hard.
I think the Crow has potential. Skarsgård is good enough to pull something out of a hat. Maybe. Yeah. I don't know. But like I said, the interesting thing is not that we're talking about how doom and gloom the summer is, Rich. The interesting thing is all of a sudden with 3 or 4 hits, we're only 16% down from last summer. Which, again, at the beginning of the summer, Rich, if you remember, everybody was like, I'm going to go jump off a building because I love movies and theaters. I'm just going to go jump off a building out a window, maybe near Wall Street. And so I think that's a good, at least one of the better stories of the year, right?
Yes.
We're Inside Out 2, by the way, just so we're clear, Inside Out 2 has generated $355 in North America and $724 million globally to date. So it is now the highest grossing movie of the year, globally, domestically. Going to be hard to beat for stuff. It's going to be hard to beat for the rest of the year, that movie. Although there are a couple things coming out near the holidays that maybe, Wicked finds the right step. You know what I mean? Like it's very much a interesting rest of the year. I don't know how I like the idea that Beetlejuice is opening in September scares me to death, but also anything can open anywhere, and that is the weekend that Warner Brothers has been opening. Like it, you know what I mean? Like they've carved out a niche, and I was telling somebody yesterday, or I was having a discussion, and tell me if I'm right on this one. So somebody said to me, this movie is coming out in February, right? This trailer hit the other day. I don't know that the trailer hit with all that it wanted to hit with. I don't know that it's, after we get past Wolverine and Deadpool, whether it's the right trailer or the right movie that's coming out next. But it's opening 2/14/25, Rich. Let me ask you a question. Is that still, because this came up, and I want you to agree with me. I hope you agree with me. Is February still a drag month for studios, Rich?
It hasn't been pre-COVID, but again, we flipped the table over, in 2020, and we're having trouble putting all the silverware back on it right now. So For
I
several
think
years up until 2020, it was a
a
fine
glorious
thing. And then,
month, right?
yeah,
Well, the
there
movies
wasn't
that
really a bad month. September was or August was always claimed to be a dump month, and that kind of had
August and
fallen by the
January, the
wayside.
two dump months from for my perspective when I was running a movie theater was August and January. But in
Mhm.
reality, August is competitive, and we have a September Beetlejuice movie coming out. And this, this is opening. Nobody's taking into perspective. February is Black History Month, kids, and this particular Captain America is the first African American cap or second African American Captain America. Sorry, nerds. The second African American Captain America. So, I think that's why it was placed there. Also, I think they are excited about it. It's opening February 14th, which means it's opening Valentine's Day weekend.
Mhm.
That's a pretty big date weekend. So, I don't know. I have Disney's throwing it there because it's garbage. I'm like, but
Well,
Black Panther opened in February.
I mean, we've seen other blockbusters over the years open on that Valentine's Day weekend. The one that stands out for me was the original Ben Affleck Daredevil, which did well. People, kind of crap on it now, but it did well at the box office when it opened. I mean, they spun off a spin-off film from it, and they wouldn't have done that if that was a big
Electra is so bad, but again, if she shows up next week in Deadpool, again, she looks so good in the outfit. Jennifer Lawrence looks so good in the outfit. Okay. Uh, Producers refused to listen to the fans at all, and they paid for it. It's either The Crow or Hellboy. Uh, and then Red Hulk. I'm excited about Red Hulk because it's theoretically it's going to be a digitized 82-year-old Harrison Ford. It has potential to be the grumpiest Hulk of all time. Rich,
What are the odds? What are the odds? Do you think that they're going to pull a fast one, and Red Hulk is not necessarily Thunderbolt Ross, but somebody else?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think the whole excitement about Harrison Ford playing Thunderbolt Ross, President Ross, is the idea that we're going to get a Hulk that looks like Harrison Ford. That will be an immediate figure buy for me. Like that will be an immediate like I have to buy that action figure because it's Hulk, but it looks like Harrison Ford, so it's going to
Oh
fit in
yeah.
with all my Han Solo and Indiana Jones. You know what I mean? Like he's going to fit in. He's not going to be out of place. Uh, that's the crazy shit that goes on in my head. Another crazy thing as we're progressing through this summer, and this is kind of like it's been a sad week. So it's been remarkably difficult if you are I just at first the first person I want to talk to about I want to talk about Shelley Duvall first because
Mm-hmm.
I think the interesting thing is everybody remembers her for Popeye and The Shining and Nashville and everything. But my favorite memories of Shelley Duvall when I was a kid, I loved fairy tale theater. I loved it. I was enamored with it. I thought it was creative and fun and it had people I really liked in it. I mean, fucking Robin Williams was the Frog Prince.
Mm-hmm.
Liza Minnelli was in Princess and the Pea. Like it was fucking big
I was a
budget,
little bit too old for it when it came out, but a friend was showing me some episodes in college, and I was like, "Oh, this is really good." I mean,
high
I'm
production
obviously.
value, very funny, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I am so sad that she died. I'm also sad that a movie that I love, The Shining, we're going to talk about some of these things. A movie that I love, The Shining, crippled her, like mentally, emotionally, crippled her as an artist, right? Like she went through a lot of hell on that The Shining set, and afterwards she was never quite right. You know what I mean? So she made so many
Mm-hmm.
good things. She was so quirky and wonderful. She's absolutely pitch perfect in Robert Altman's Popeye. Like you cannot get better casting and better acting from an actress. She is amazing. Now the movie is
So
crazy, but it's
so many
fun.
people have come to me and said Popeye is a terrible movie, and I said, "When did you see it?" They said, "Oh, when I was like 9." I go, "Go back and watch it again. Go back and watch it as
Watch
an
and how ambitious it is. The thing I
how
would always say to
the
how spot on it is,
storyline,
how good the jokes are. You know what I mean? Like that is
the
one of those rare
songwriting
movies.
amazing.
Oh, the
Harry
songs
Nilsson.
are incredible. Sweet Haven, holy fuck! With the whole fucking cast kind of moving and swaying with the fucking waves, ridiculous.
Would Paul Thomas Anderson have stolen a song from Popeye to use in the movie he did with Adam Sandler?
Punch Drunk Love.
Yes. Would he have stolen that if it wasn't a damn good song? No.
Yeah,
So
and that's the thing. I may she rest in peace. I know she was struggling with demons. We also lost a rare gem of a woman. Dr. Ruth Westheimer was 96 years old. She was incredible though, and you and I growing up in our lifetimes, she was on TV a lot telling people having sex is okay. Right? Yeah. It's not dirty, it's not whatever. It's something we need to do. And I just think
talking about it is okay.
Talking about it is okay. Finding
and have a conversation about that.
An adult conversation.
Have to hide it. That was amazing. I mean, okay.
And humor.
Ruth Westheimer, and then I know who we have next. We might as well just kind of segue because I feel both
perfect.
Both Dr. Ruth Westheimer and Richard Simmons were so impactful for helping people be better in the 80s and into the 90s.
Yes, fitness-wise, sexually, they were gurus that actually, when you read about them or heard about them, they weren't assholes to people in the fake. Like they weren't they weren't one way in front of the cameras and another way behind the cameras. You know what I mean? And so I think, when they both passed away this week, it's like a piece of your inner 80s loses a piece of its soul. And then you watch these things and try to figure it out. Now, as a fat kid, I don't know about you. As a fat kid, I tried everything. So sweating to the oldies, I'm not saying I ever did it, but I'm definitely saying there might have been a video cassette or two in my house. Because people would send them to me as jokes. But he was a great guru. He was somebody that cared about people and cared about their weight and didn't treat people of size like garbage.
I mean, and which is very important too. As opposed to Jane Fonda, who would have like 3 supermodels and spandex dancing behind her in her home videos for fitness. It was funny. I mean, I was a little glib when I saw like both of them had passed away so soon to each other. I was like, wow, a bad day to, for some of David Letterman's more quirky recurring guests.
Wonderful guests. Self-help.
Yeah, both of them were wonderful on Late Night with David Letterman.
Yes,
and,
Letterman and
like
Richard Simmons were special.
And
her, because she would giggle and say something funny, and Dave would like kind of roll his eyes and just be like, "Oh my god, I can't believe she's a guest on my show." Speaking of shows that mattered in the 80s and 90s, and 90s in particular, Shannon Doherty lost her battle with cancer. She was in 90210. She was, of course, in Charmed. She was in Mallrats, for anybody who grew up in the Kevin Smith fandom like I did. These are people that are touchstones. And like, think about it. Everybody our age, Rich, watched 90210. You can say you didn't. You can lie about it.
I didn't. I was not.
You really didn't?
Was not. Still am not a soap opera kind of guy. And I just was like, the closest I got to teen
I watched
soap
it just so I'd have something to talk with the girls at school with. That's what my thought process was. If I watch the show and I know what's going on, I can talk to girls about it. And like, none of the other guys were watching it at school. I thought I was smart. And so I some comments. Let's get some comments. Let's see. Sheller's recently in a flick with folks we know. It was her last film, so I'm sure we're gonna. That's an incredibly. We'll have to make sure we talk to them and figure out, like, because I feel like she was definitely one we're gonna miss. I went back and watched Land of the Lost in 1974. Holy crow, it was really good. Yeah, the old TV show. Yeah, it was amazing. Mm-hmm. He also passed away this week. So Richard Simmons on Whose Line, funniest shit ever.
That is a clip I don't think I had seen before, and then just started circulating yesterday, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is insane!" It is some high level, delightful insanity.
Yeah,
If,
Pauly
if anybody
Shore
has,
really wanted to play Richard in a documentary. No, this is Joe. I'm going to correct you. There is a feature film that Pauly Shore was really angling to play Richard Simmons in, and they had a huge like Richard Simmons didn't want his life as a joke, and he viewed Pauly Shore as somebody that might make a joke out of him. So he was upset about that. Deal a Meal, my mom and grandma had it. Yeah, I mean everybody had it. And then Shannon, yeah, I mean, I was, so like these are people that are touchstone people. They're people that we know by sight. They're people that we see. Now, we also lost somebody in the last 2 weeks before while we weren't on, and not a lot of people are going to know this person, Rich, right? This person right here. His name is
and
John
you
Landau,
should, because
and you
he
should.
gave you.
He's given you so many gifts, including, well, and I'm going to put up another picture of him. This is
Okay.
where you should know John Landau from. That guy he's friends with right there is James Cameron. And John Landau and James Cameron, he's produced some of the biggest hits in the history of movies, including all the Avatar movies, Titanic, and True Lies. The interesting side note here, True Lies, the movie we're going to talk about tonight, Rich, and a perfect segue. True Lies is the movie.
Let's not segue into it right away, because I do want to talk about John Landau myself for a moment.
Okay, well, no, we'll do that. But John Landau, like, he was a producer and an Oscar winner, and he was one of the people that is rumored to have been able to look at James Cameron and go, "Hey, we don't need to do that." He started out as an executive vice president of feature film at 20th Century Fox, where he produced Die Hard 2, Power Rangers, The Last of the Mohicans, True Lies, one we're going to talk about tonight, and a little movie called Titanic, and then eventually what would happen is he would leave Fox, and he would go and he would work with James Cameron. He would join the company with James Cameron, and they were inevitably put together, like they were inevitably together the entire way through their careers. So the interesting thing is, Landau, if you read up on Avatar or Titanic or any of these big budget movies that James Cameron's produced, Landau was the quiet force of like calm behind the scenes. I don't know if you know this, Rich, but James Cameron's a bit of an artiste and a little bit crazy sometimes. And Landau, everything I've come across about Landau was always in the room with Cameron. And one of the stories I literally heard today as I was watching a documentary about True Lies was the first time they met. He was an executive working for 20th Century Fox. He was put into a room with James Cameron, and James Cameron circled. There was a room full of people getting ready to produce True Lies, and Cameron came all the way around to him and said, "We are either going to come out of this the best of friends or bitter enemies." And John Landau apparently said to him, "I would like us to become the best of friends, James." And they did.
Well, I mean, okay.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Landau, was very much the I'll make sure everything Jim needs, I will get.
Yes.
He's well known for that. And his parents were film producers too. Ellie and Eli Landau. Edie, excuse me, and Eli. They produced the Walter Matthau film Hopscotch, which is fantastic. It's a great, great film. They produced the Mania documentary, The Chosen, Holcroft Covenant, a couple of other things. Edie, his mother, is from Wilkes-Barre. The family was from Wilkes-Barre, and when Titanic just happened to win an Oscar, or 11 or whatever it was. Um, literally the
It
day
won a lot of
after,
Oscars.
yes, the day after the Academy Awards ceremony, that next morning, I had some free time. I was swinging by I was freelancing for the Wilkes-Barre Times Leader at the time. I walk into the newsroom to pitch an idea to my editor, and he goes, "Hey, want to interview John Landau?" And I'm like, the
Yes.
guy who just won an Oscar 12 hours ago?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he told me, "Oh yeah, his mom's from here. He has an aunt who still lives here." And so I was given a phone number to call, and within 24 hours from that point, I was talking with John Landau, and he was super incredibly gracious, lovely guy. We had a great chat. He confessed that because he was the guy, when he was talking about the process of making the film and everything, he said, "Yeah, and even the special effects guy scanned me, so I was the passenger on the ship that you see fall and bounce off the propeller." And I was like, "Oh my God, you were propeller guy?" And he's like, "Yeah, I was propeller guy."
That's propeller guy.
And it was a really delight to talk to. And I think that might be genetic, because we had a family photo that I had to take back to his aunt's house. And I traveled, I drove over to where she was living, and with the intention of, ding dong, "Hi, I'm from the Times Leader. Here's your photo back. Thank you. Goodbye." She brought me in. We sat down. We had, she made tea and she gave me a soda. And, we chatted for like 20 minutes. Delightful woman, delightful family, as far as I'm concerned. And this is like the weirdest story, and I'm rambling.
That's okay. Yeah, it's a perfect segue.
It speaks to how he was able probably to get so much done by just being like, "Hey," being open, being enthusiastic. And I always wish I had a second chance to talk with him again, and I never did. If at the very least to say, your aunt was delightful as well. But
and the thing is, I was reading some of the obituary and some of the the people from around the globe that basically talked about him and how they talked about him, and it's just really amazing tributes, people referencing the idea that he is as big as David O. Selznick, as important to the film. It's an interesting. He really
all
was
the entries on the IMDb, but the ones that are there really hit.
Well, yeah, and they're all there was he had a string. He is a producer in Hollywood that had a string of billion-dollar movies.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of producers in Hollywood get to do that. And he was also somebody. Here's the thing, you hear stories about James Cameron, right? And the stories were always kind of, but Landau made him easier to work with, right? He comes on to the set of this movie we're going to talk about tonight. And this is the segue. This movie, True Lies, as a consultant for Fox and somebody that's going to watch Jim Cameron and make sure Jim Cameron doesn't go Jim Cameron. It's like that old, Eddie the old Chris Rock joke. That tiger didn't go tiger. That tiger didn't go crazy. That tiger went tiger. Jim Cameron producing a movie is Jim Cameron over budget, is what he normally is. So we're going to talk a little bit about. Well, yeah, doing well. Amazing story. It is an amazing story, Rich. But yeah, so let's talk a little bit about this True Lies movie. Let's talk about, and let's get into it. Production. At the time, kids, this is the most expensive movie in film history. First 100. This is the crack at the ceiling. This is the first $100 million production. And what I would say to that is, we see a lot of movies, Rich. We see tons of movies every week, and we see movies that are $100 million movies. Okay, there is not an ounce of this movie that doesn't look like it's not $100 million movie. It looks great. It plays great. It's shot big. It's got huge sequences. It has real Harrier jets. It has mock-ups of Harrier jets. It has real helicopters. It has fake helicopters. It has giant action sequences. It has, calmer moments. It has a horse on rooftop. It has, it has all these things.
It has location shooting and not just Vancouver subbing for Washington D.C.
It's legit DC, right? It's legit DC, and it's legit downtown Miami. Like it's they like it, so when you say the movie costs 120 million, depending on who you talk to, it looks like $100 million movie. It looks it, and everything you do when you start reading into it and you start looking at it, everything they poured into this movie, Rich, it's all on screen. It's all there, right? It's when you look at it, like, they're filmed with horses. There's bike riding. It's so crazy that this is one of those movies where every bit of the money that's spent on it is on the screen, right? It's filmed over 7 months. And we're gonna have to get into some dark stuff as well as some light stuff that has to be discussed. But and production. So there are a couple dark things we have to get to.
I was gonna ask you if we wanted to hit the one thing I think you're gonna hit.
I think we have to hit it. I think it's because it is one of the two black eyes on this movie that have maybe caused the movie to not be as high in estimation as it possibly deserves, or does it? Do you know what I mean? Like it's thing that has to be discussed.
I into our chat. If that's
we don't want to trigger anybody.
I was gonna say, is that, but you want to talk about that? I'm fine if we do. I was thinking maybe we don't.
I think we have to at least chat about it for a second, as one of the defining reasons why maybe this movie isn't 30 years after the fact isn't as big a zeitgeist movie as it could be, or why it's kind of been kind of put to the side. Let's see, high school friends of mine were background actors in West Palm or Miami. So production went that's super cool. Production went 7 months. One of the major things that's come out in the Me Too movement in 2018 was that Elijah Dushku, who plays the daughter Dana, was sexually abused on the set by one of the film's stunt coordinators, Joel Kramer. So that's come out. That's part of the movie's history now. And I think the interesting thing is, both Schwarzenegger, Jamie Lee Curtis, Tom Arnold, James Cameron have all come forward and said, "We're sorry we didn't know. We're sorry we missed it. And if we had known, he would have been taken out back and had the shit beat out of him." Is essentially what Cameron said. Cameron would have said it would have been a major day on set. But it's part of why the film has a black eye a little bit, right? It's part of the deep cut of why the movie maybe isn't as well established as it could be. That being said, I was looking through the Elijah Dushku Facebook thing, and I noticed this is a true statement. I went on it today, and my comment was, "Thank you for your bravery. It should never have happened to you." It's one of the first things that came up on her Facebook post. So I was I had totally forgotten I had done that, but I agree with it wholeheartedly.
I dare say, not to minimize what we're talking about right now, but just the idea that True Lies may have slipped out of the public movie consciousness might have also something to do with the fact that it doesn't have a strong history of being available on home video.
Oh, that's part of it. I think that's part of it as well.
So
we just had a release as well. But I think this is one of the movies as that we may enjoy, but the controversy surrounding it, the two things in production that are surrounding it are the Elijah Dushku allegations and the
Mhm.
kind of abysmal treatment of Arab characters and maybe wives. So I want to get out of the way with the production because once we get into the critique of it, it'll come up again. But otherwise, the other major production story is that you know I could not believe I saw this today, but the shot on the bridge was a one shot take with, and it
Mhm.
was done in reverse. So like I saw things in the documentary that was part of the home video release recently. Two things that blew my mind. One, that during production when they were doing the shots, of course, one is that they built a Harrier on top of a building, right, and basically had a crane that was moving the jet around, but also moving the production gimbal around as well, which is like a trick. And then Cameron talks about in the documentary that basically during this shot, what happened was they had finished a sequence and they were moving the Harrier down, and he said, right there. And the jet was hanging over a street in Miami. And he said, we can, if we harness people up and we put them on there, I can get the same idea that the the aircraft is moving if I film everything in the helicopter I'm using for the outer portion of it. So they went in this documentary went into detail about how he had them stop and had a Harrier, and John Lando is in the video going, yeah, we didn't really take into account how dangerous this was. Jim stopped everybody from moving, and basically we didn't take into account that this is a mock-up Harrier jet that's hanging over a city street with onlookers and everybody. And then Jim's like, "Give me 25 minutes." And Jim went up and said, "Now put all the stunt people on." And they were all on the plane and like various things. And he basically did rotations around the building in a helicopter to mimic the plane moving. And it's just like it's stuff where you go, that's why he's one of the greatest action film directors of all. Like, it's mind-boggling.
He's
Also,
an amazing technician.
he is, and like the other thing was that the everything from the boat sequence, the bridge sequence, everything from the bridge sequence was one take, and he pieced it together from three different one takes.
Mm-hmm.
So one take, and basically they rigged a car, they rigged a limo to go 70 miles an hour by remote control. And that's the thing you get out of like when you find out about this movie. Everything in this movie is practical special effects. There's very little CGI. There are things, it's amazing. And then there are pieces where you're watching it and you can clearly see it's not Schwarzenegger, it's not Jamie Lee Curtis, and you merely go on your way. But the idea that Cameron, there is a documentary out there that you can watch where Cameron will tell you how he filmed the sequence that looks like a plane's moving, and it's not. It's not moving at all. He is.
Mm-hmm.
It's and that's the production stories. The production stories are the horrible one. Landau becoming his best friend, and then casting like because
Yeah.
basically Landau came onto the movie and Cameron basically said, "I want to cast this, this, and this." And the person that had the toughest casting call was Jamie Lee Curtis because they didn't know if she had the chops, and I guess John Lando was smart enough to leave a fish called Wanda sitting on a table strategically for James Cameron to find. He popped it in, and he's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, this is the girl. This is
Mm-hmm.
her." Right? So it's amazing. Also in the documentary, there's a great moment where Cameron made a promise to Jamie Lee Curtis's agent And Jamie Lee Curtis's agent said, she'll sign on for the movie, but you have to call Arnold Schwarzenegger and ask that her name be above the title with his. And Cameron waited throughout all production. At the end of the production, we're crazy. And he said, called Arnold up.
My producer
tells the story.
He
tells the story. He goes, I called Arnold up, and he goes, Arnold, I made a promise at the beginning of this production that I would, on behalf of Jamie Lee Curtis's agent and her, I would call and ask you if you could put her name above the title with you. And he looks in the camera and he goes, I expected Schwarzenegger to say no. He goes, but this was after filming. This was after she did all the things that she did in the movie, and it was after all the different pieces, and so he goes. He waited for a moment, and he goes. Arnold's on the phone, kind of breathing, and I'm thinking to myself, hey, this is him finding a way to say that can't happen because I'm Arnold Schwarzenegger. At which point he said, no, she deserves it. She should be above the name above the title with me. She's everything in the movie. And at which point James Cameron looks in the camera and he goes, that's the kind of person Arnold Schwarzenegger is. Arnold Schwarzenegger is a person that I haven't come across in Hollywood a lot. The type of person. So those are production stories. The other really great production story is there's one where I can't remember it now. I fucking went up on it. I just went up on it. That's okay. We'll move on. But the production history of this movie is absolutely incredible. Script was right there from the get-go. They stole it from a French movie. Not stole it, but they basically remade a French movie. But then Cameron sat down and basically put a list of things he wanted in the movie. I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this. And John Lando said, we can do it, but we got to try to keep the budget under $50 million. And he's like, okay. $100 million later. Yeah. So it's a wonderful production. This is the interrogation scene, which is one of the better scenes. Of course, the Jamie Lee Curtis playing a streetwalker sequence, and then the Tom Arnold, who that's the other thing about the other piece of the production that has to be talked about. The casting in this movie. You got Tom Arnold as a second fiddle. You got, and that produced a lot. You have Spencer Trilby, played by Charlton Heston, which is one of the great ridiculous names. He, of course, runs the Omega Sector. And then this guy right here on our screen right now, Bill Paxton. He's one of the aces of the movie. He is smarmy and charming and devious and mischievous and amazing. And also, there is a bit of a shaming of a person who's a slimy, cowardly person. But other cast members, you got Tia Carrere, I should say, who plays Juno Skinner. This is one of the shots from the Harrier. And then this is Arnold Schwarzenegger firing an AK-47. Lots of action sequences. Production was, pretty good, except for one.
Can I just say this is probably Tom Arnold's best performance? I really can't think of anything off the top of my head that I've seen him in that was better than this.
No, it's a perfect role for him because he's not required to do anything. He doesn't.
I mean, he's a fun sidekick. But at times he's serious in his role. It's not like, I'm Tom Arnold, here I am. There are positions where he has to be serious.
There's a misogynistic sadness to him. Like when he's talking about his wife moving out of his house, there's bits and pieces that are really kind of like sad but it is his best performance. Like it's not even close, right? So here's where we get fun. What's the date today, Rich? It is 7/15/2024. So where was I 30 years ago to the date tonight?
Yes.
I was sitting in a theater watching True Lies because this movie opened on July 15th, 1994. So opening weekend, $25 million. It knocks Forrest Gump out of first place. Forrest Gump, which was on a tear at the box office, it knocks Forrest Gump out of first place. It ends up grossing domestically $146.2 million at the domestic box office. But here's where we get interesting. This movie grosses $219 million at the foreign box office. This is one of the first cases where a movie outgrossed its domestic total. It's one of the first cases of it. It was the second major grossing film ever released in China behind The Fugitive. It generated over $103 million there. And it became the highest grossing Hollywood film in China's history at the time. It also, at the time, was the highest grossing film in the Philippines. It was one of those things where $378 million worldwide at a time when we weren't talking about a worldwide gross. Even though American films were being sent overseas, the level with which American films were consumed by overseas markets was not there yet, right? So this movie becomes one of the first. It's almost like a patient zero for movies being. It's only the second movie to get released in China. It's only it ends up becoming the third highest grossing film of 1994 worldwide behind Lion King and Forrest Gump. That is a good two to be behind in 1994. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then this is where it gets wild. So it opens on 2,300 theaters, really high. It eventually maxes out at about 2,500 theaters. It averages 9 weeks. It does 40% of its domestic share in its opening weekend, right? Lasts about 5 weeks at the box office. And then the production budget is $100 million. So it grosses 3.7 times its production budget. But the inflation adjusted domestic box office gross, Rich, is $386 million. So we're talking at this summer's box office, it would be 2 behind Inside Out 2. And then you add into it, that's domestic inflated. The 219 worldwide inflated would make this one of the closest movies to $1 billion before $1 billion was a reality for movies. Right? Yeah. Just by inflation, the inflationary box office. So it's not just a small hit, it's a mega hit. It's huge. It eventually, the funny thing is, the rest of the summer is Forrest Gump and True Lies playing at theaters all over the country. Although in Japan, it was number 1 for 12 straight weeks. So it's it's one of those stories where you go, if you don't know a lot about film history and then you start reading up on it, it's the first movie that went worldwide. It's the first movie that, was where I think it's the first movie where I think Hollywood went up and went, you mean movies can gross a lot of money domestically and a lot of money worldwide? And
I mean, there were some exceptions before this. I think like the Star Wars films, Star Trek, I know didn't carry overseas all that much, which is kind of the reason why.
But this was the 93 and 94 were the first years where
aggressive in trying to put those out.
Well, yeah, it's like the Mad Max movies. They're not necessarily worldwide phenomenons. You know what I mean? Okay. Critical response then and now is also a real interesting portion of this movie. As you know, we use the aggregate at Rotten Tomatoes. This movie is at a steady 70% from critics. Actually, I'm sorry. Hold on. 70% from critics, 76% from the audience. So it's right on par. And what you'll notice about the reviews, if you go on and look up True Lies reviews, is that a lot of the critics have basically, a lot of them are looking at the movie through the lens of 2020s and beyond and forward, right? So you have a little bit of the misogyny kind of gets into the reviews. Why it's down to 70%. A little bit of the misogyny of like treating your wife terribly. A little bit of the bad view of how Arabic people are presented as only terrorists and greasy and terrible. Or as Schwarzenegger says in the movie, did you ever kill anyone? Yes, but they were all bad. Right?
Yeah.
There isn't a single Arabic character that's not swarthy and terrible in this movie, except for Faisal,
Whoa.
played by Heslov.
Yes, okay. I was
Okay.
going to say Fastille.
Okay.
Grant Heslov goes on to become George Clooney's producing partner.
Yes.
But I mean, the movie does try to have it both ways, because at one point, the bad guy's giving his whole thing about, you guys are the terrorists because you sit in the comfort of your own home and bomb us and everything, which kind of is the same criticism that got Bill Maher in trouble with ABC when he wound up, in the aftermath of 9/11. But I think here in the movie, it's presented as a valid viewpoint for these terrorists. It's just that everybody's terrorist.
They're a little one note.
It's a little bit of a one note criticism for U.S. foreign policy. I mean, obviously Cameron is not interested in that. He just kind of has it there as well. We got to give them some reason. Just, we can't say, oh, we're bad because we're bad. But
well, no, they're bad because they have nuclear weapons. Well, and I think one of the things, looking at it critically, right? I think one of the things where the movie succeeds, where I think people might take it a little too serious. I understand the misogyny aspect of it, or the idea that his wife has to break out and become like a stripper to find out who she is, and all this other stuff. That's another thing from the documentary, by the way. I forgot to bring that up. That was what I was thinking of. So during that strip sequence in the hotel room, Cameron and Curtis planned the fall, but Schwarzenegger didn't know about it. So when she does the pull thing and does the fall on the ground, and Schwarzenegger goes to get up, it's him actually going to get up Jamie Lee Curtis.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't. So it's a great behind the scenes story. I think where the movie really functions well is the action set pieces are pretty well done. The fight in the bathroom, the chase around Georgetown is really good. They're tongue in cheek. I realized something today that Cameron put in the screenplay that I never really noticed before, but once he said it in the documentary, I couldn't get it out of my head. Schwarzenegger says sorry a lot in this movie. Yeah, which is not something he does in a lot of movies, but Cameron said, I put it in because I think it's funny. And also seeing Schwarzenegger apologize for everything is amazing. So like when you can do a drinking game with this movie where I would with the sheer number of times that Schwarzenegger says sorry. But I think the action set pieces are ungodly created. They're amazingly well done. They're amazingly well shot.
All I know is the two people in the enclosed glass elevator with Schwarzenegger and the horse are the bravest human beings I know, because if that horse got spooked, everybody would have been just jelly on the glass.
A fun documentary filmmaking thing that came up today. Those two people were horse trainers.
Okay.
There you go. So we learn something new every day. But I think
I spent a little bit of time around horses, and as I was watching that, I was like,
oh my God. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Every sequence in this movie, there are sequences in this movie where you go, what the fuck? Like, who is, like, this is crazy. Of course, there's an underwater sequence at the beginning. The opening sequence rivals the James Bond opening. You know what I mean? Like,
I think that's very intentional too.
Oh, I do too. I think there was a franchise to be had here that just they missed their
window.
The window. And so part of it, I really enjoy this movie. I think it's funny. I think Curtis is perfectly cast. I think Schwarzenegger is having the time of his life because because we're well into his action career, and this is a challenge. It's not challenging action wise. He's doing shit he's done in other movies.
Yeah.
But what is challenging is he's playing the dad, he's playing the husband, he's playing all like so. True Lies to me is like an amalgam of like Total Recall and Kindergarten Cop put together, and it's 2 hours and 21 minutes, and it's just action sequences are balls to the wall. Like the fucking bridge thing when you find out that the bridge sequence and the like everything leading up to it, like the movie has great sequences. Now, do they all gel? Does it work perfectly out? No, but it's one of those movies where it's 2 hours and 21 minutes, Rich, and I think it moves better than a lot of 2 hours and 21 minute movies.
True.
Like it moves, it's got a speed to it.
To circle back to the Bond thing, though, for a second, as I was watching it today, and I'm like, okay, we've seen Bond do the, show up underwater with the wetsuit, take it off, and he's got the tuxedo. We've seen him just kind of casually walk into a situation and, kind of bullshit his way through. We've seen him do this. We've seen him do that. Oh, gee, a sequence where they're chasing him in the snow on skis. We've seen that a number of times.
A lot. Yeah, a lot.
And so I'm like,
but I think,
it feels in a way that Cameron was kind of ticking off certain Bond tropes that he wanted to do to get them out of the way to say, hey, this is not a Bond film. See, we could do a Bond film if we wanted to, but we're going to do something different because, our guy's actually married, and this is going to, and we're going to explore.
It's a lie. He's been lying to his family forever. Also, the interesting thing is, like, Bond never has any help. And two guys sitting in a fucking cramped, van outside, feeding him all the information, telling him what's going on, like, and joking with him. Like, it's like, the jokes, I will say this, misogyny aside and darkness aside, I think the jokes all work. I think the stuff with Bill Paxton works remarkably. I think, vast swaths of the movie work really well. I think the action sequences are top notch. Like the fucking who dreams up a Harrier jet sequence in the city of Miami? Also, just with Schwarzenegger, because the thing is, and I say this to you, I've watched a lot of Schwarzenegger movies. I love Schwarzenegger movies. The whole point of having Schwarzenegger is that you have him there to rip somebody's arm out. He's a Wookiee, right? He's a Wookiee. He's there to rip people's arm out of their sockets. And the idea that you put him in a Harrier jet and he's gunning down people in the coolest possible way in a Harrier jet. I think it's like the old Howard Hawks thing. Got to have 3 action sequences and a little bit of story. It's got 3 genuine action sequences that all hum, and not including the opening. It's got the action sequences to spare. It's got amazing comedy sequences. Like the interrogation scene is every marriage's interrogation scene to the nth degree. Oh, have you killed anyone? Yeah, but they were all bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think Schwarzenegger is as comfortable on camera. He trusts James Cameron to a level and degree that I don't think he trusts other filmmakers, right? And so when Cameron does something or says something and they pull it out, I think Jamie Lee Curtis is so amazing in the role as Helen that she becomes midway through the movie, it shifts, it becomes her movie, right? And it becomes her reactions, her responses. What is she gonna do? And she goes from being somebody that's being saved to somebody that you've watched her kind of like blossom. And she's Jamie Lee Curtis, is so good in this movie. It's one of her best performances that we don't, we just chalk it up as a Schwarzenegger Cameron movie, but she is the glue that holds the movie together. And it's one of her better performances. It's comedic, but it's also heartbreaking. Like there's a sequence early on in the movie. It's the first sequence they filmed on set. It's a sequence early on in the movie where he's come back from the Switzerland mission, and they're getting dressed, and it's morning, and she said, one guy came and plumber came. He wants to excavate underneath the slab, and it's going to cost us $600. And he goes, well, did you just tell him to pay for it? He's putting a tie on, and she's like, no, I offered to sleep with him, and he'd take $100 off. And he turns to her and he kisses her on the cheek, and he's like, good idea, honey. And he walks out, and you're just like, wasn't listening. And she's sad at that moment. And so, I just think it's one of those movies that transcends an action genre. It's, we talked about Beverly Hills Cop the last time we were doing a show. It is the ultimate hybrid done in the 90s. You know what I mean? It is the ultimate hybrid. It has the ultimate action star. It has probably the best action film director of all time. Like, I mean, legit, technically, the greatest director we're ever going to see that does action sequences. Everything he does turns to gold. Every idea he has in his head that he thinks he can film, just is amazing. And I thoroughly enjoy the movie. I come out of it every time after watching it, and I just go, God, that's a good fucking movie. You know what I mean? Like, just, I don't know. Okay, comments really quick, and then we'll get to near the end here. I only watched one movie in the theater that year. It was Gump. My friend convinced me to go based on the soundtrack alone. I did have a great time viewing True Lies on VHS when we were trying to spot our friends. Yeah, you know what? I think. Well, first off, Joe, you didn't go to the movies. I'm very disappointed that the only thing you saw in theaters in '94 was Gump. That's disappointing. Yeah, we're gonna tisk. But then it gets. This is another interesting facet of the True Lies story that has to be told: legacy, franchise, and viability. This is where it gets kind of an interesting dark turn with world events. So the basis of this movie is that the bad guys, the terrorists, are essentially threatening the United States with dirty bombs that will go off in one U.S. city around the world. The reason we never get a sequel, Rich, the reason we never get a franchise sequel, even though I wanted True Lies 2, the reason we never get it, Helen and Harry working together, is because 9/11 happened. So they went out of their way to try to actually, really quick, I do want to read Roger Ebert. It's stuff like that we go to it's stuff like that we go to Arnold Schwarzenegger movies for, and True Lies has a lot of it. I think that's a great, it's why we go see Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, and it has abundance of it. Him beating people up, anyway. But the reason we don't get a sequel, Rich, is because 9/11 happened. And so they rattled around, April 97, Schwarzenegger and Tom Arnold met with Cameron. They were working on the sequel. Cameron at the time, of course, is working on Titanic. Following the release of Titanic, Cameron started working on it again, right? He basically sent out a writer search. 20th Century Fox negotiated with Jeff Easton to write the script under Cameron's supervision, of course. And they were planning for a mid-2001 release with Cameron expected to direct. By the end of 99, there was a possibility the filming would begin in the third quarter of 2000. Script goes past that and was ongoing through June of 2000. Cameron planned to produce True Lies 2 with Fox, but was undecided if he was going to direct at that point because he was just getting done with Titanic. And he wanted to wait until the script was complete. Easton worked with Cameron on the script for approximately a year and a half, and Schwarzenegger and Arnold both approved the script. March 2001, script's completed. Curtis confirmed to reply to role, right? So she signs up board. And then the September 11 attacks happen, right? Even though they happen in September 11th, Schwarzenegger says we're going to shoot it in 2002. We have a good script. All of us are ready. We have to do some changes because it deals with some terrorist act of some sort, but it's pretty much done. And then later in 2002, Cameron basically says, and this is a quote, "Terrorism is no longer something to take as lightly as we did it in the first one. We just can't see it happening given the current world climate. then it continues. June 2003, Schwarzenegger basically says Jim was worried because there was an airplane scene, and it was a terrific airplane scene that didn't have anything to do with the terrorism we had in 9/11, but it was a great fight scene that happened on a plane when the plane goes down and this kind of thing. It was a very important moment in the movie, and he felt like he can't do it. And the saddest thing is that life interrupted a franchise. This is one of the rare cases where they didn't go back to the well, where Hollywood didn't get to make the sequel, where Hollywood didn't go back to the trough that fed it, right? And it's all because it's mainly because James Cameron.
It's a terrible. It was a terrible reason why they couldn't go forward, but they chose not to go forward for the absolute best reasons.
Correct reason. It's absolutely.
Yes.
When you in your heart you go, I really want a True Lies movie. Then you realize right around the time they were trying to make it, also you realize that the script had a giant plane sequence in it. Just too close to home, man. Too close to home, right? And so we never get a True Lies sequel. We get here and there, we get video games, and then last year, actually it was kicking from 2021 on. CBS basically had an idea of making a television show, and then it was originally going to be produced by McG as director of the pilot, and then he got fired, and it was eventually picked up for broadcast, starring Steve Howey and Ginger Gonzaga. Steve Howey, of course, who was on Shameless, in the lead roles, and the show was picked up for series. It was scheduled to premiere on February 23rd, 2023, delayed to March 1st, 2023, and then canceled May of 2023. And so this is the rare case where you and I are looking at it, and very few things. Has very few things with regards to franchise and viability. The legacy is still there for the movie. It's easily regarded in the top 5 Schwarzenegger movies of all time, right? But the franchise viability dies on the vine and is killed by a real historic act that changed the world. And so it's a real interesting story, isn't it? Like, I think that's one of the more intriguing things. Also, the idea that somebody in Hollywood just didn't throw money at them, and they get them to say yes, even though, because once you hear from Schwarzenegger that there was a giant plane fight sequence, and all you can think of is everything that happened on September 11th, it's bittersweet. It's one of those things where we lost a franchise that moviegoers loved because of real life.
Yeah,
it's really interesting. I think it's really interesting. And then when they try to do it, there's never enough star power, right? Whenever, like, the people that were in the CBS show, my wife was watching the CBS show, and I legit sat down to watch it with her, and I leaned over midway through and I said, I can't take this seriously. And she's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I can't take this seriously. This guy's not Arnold Schwarzenegger. And the girl, while attractive, is not Jamie Lee Curtis, and this isn't being directed by James Cameron. I can't take this seriously. And then I remember her saying, she's like, I think it's okay. I'm like, okay. And then I came down the next day and it was canceled. Like, it was literally canceled within 2 weeks of it. You know what I mean? Like, a month of when it premiered. I
blinked and it was gone. And I was like, oh, I'm not watching this.
Yeah, and again, I tried watching it once, and I was just like, I can't do this. Like, it's and also it's like one of those bittersweet things when you're a movie fan. But I think it's one of the most interesting movie-wise movies with regards to putting it in the 2020s. The idea that it just got a major video, 4K release with all of the James Cameron movies, with Aliens and Titanic and The Abyss and this. I think it's a real interesting moment when Schwarzenegger was the biggest star on the planet, and not a fake
Mm-hmm.
star, not like what we say about Dwayne Johnson that he's like the biggest star on the planet. Schwarzenegger was legit the biggest star on the planet. He could open movies all over the world, right? And I just think it's one of those movies that's also eternally watchable. Like even if you decide that you're gonna hate it for the misogyny or hate it for its treatment of Arab people or hate it because of its terrible history with the terrible accusations and the end of that guy's career, deservedly so. Um, it's still a fun watch, man. It's jazzed and it's action packed and it's funny and it's I think it's one of my favorite Schwarzenegger movies. Somebody asked me that the other day too. Like, what are your favorite Schwarzenegger movies? It's in the top five. It's in the top five. I like simple Schwarzenegger best. So my top five is like they're not the greatest of movies, but I mean the one is, but the rest of them are just movies I thoroughly enjoy for everything it is. And I
Mm-hmm.
think True Lies is one of those Schwarzenegger movies that you just go, yeah, that's when he was on top of the world. He could do anything. He could open a movie about a kindergarten cop. He could open a movie with Danny DeVito as his twin brother. He could do anything,
Craziness.
Crazy.
Craziness.
Okay, well that's a good place to stop tonight. We're an hour 23 minutes, which isn't bad. Eight minutes over our allotted time. A couple things. This is an exciting week for the network. We're all back this week.
Yes.
So tomorrow night, Loud and Nerdy, Tuesdays at 9. We may have a guest or two. I don't know if it's going to play out, but we're going to see. We're going to try. We may have a guest, but we'll also be doing Elegy, which is the one of the episodes of the Twilight Zone. That's Twilight Zone Redux tomorrow. And of course, Jerry's going to have a lot of cool movies on Tubi or streaming that you can watch that you may not have seen or deserve to see. And then coming up July 17th, Gabe is back. So Symbolistic Cynicism returns with special guest producer and actor Steve Barton. It's Wednesday, July 17th at 10 p.m. on the Indie Escape Network. Steve is a great friend of the network, and he's produced Terrifier 2. He's also part of the amazing Allegoria and also the Nightmare on Elm Street documentary Never Sleep Again. He's also starred in George Romero's Survival of the Dead, Hatchet 2, Area 51, and Friday the 13th. He is a really big guest. We're super excited to have him. We're super excited to have Gabe back. And we just want everybody to have a great week. It's very exciting when we have three shows on the network in a week. So we want to make sure Gabe gets a big shout out, and it's a big guest. This is somebody that's made a lot of cool movies, and also, the Never Sleep Again documentary about Nightmare on Elm Street is one of the best horror film documentaries out there.
Mm-hmm.
And then where can people find your stuff, Rich Drees? Because you've got so much of it. We didn't even talk about Axel F. We should, but we will at some point this summer. But where can people find your stuff?
All of my reviews and other writing can be found at FilmBuffOnline.com. I do two other podcasts. One is with the Philadelphia Film Critics Circle, and that's called The Film Scribes. And then, of course, I do the Big Picture podcast with my co-host and best friend, Natasha Bogutsky.
We got to get her back on. We got to get her back on here.
She's in the middle of prepping for like
7 shows
play plus 2 different one-acts in a night of one. She's
so wanted, and but we want her back.
Overextending herself a little bit, I'm afraid. I'm afraid for her, but she says she can handle it, so I will take her at her word. But that does mean Big Picture Podcast is on a bit of a hiatus. I am going to try to. I have my cassette tape from my John Landau, interview, and I'm going to try to see if I can clean that up enough to make it listenable for people. Because if it is, we might do like a little mini episode where I just introduce that and we play that. Not sure that's going to happen. I still have to. I gave it a little bit of a listen, and I'm like, I might be able to clean this up. I don't want to make any promises, but that might be something to look forward to. And if you want to keep an ear out for that, you can always find Big Picture Podcast at bigpicturepod.com. We also post it when our new episodes go up on FilmBuffOnline.com, which also gets posted on our Film Buff Online Facebook page. So find that, and I'm on the socials at FilmBuffRich. That's Twitter and Threads.
Okay, so
Not
I am
Threads.
on. Okay,
sorry,
you're killing me. I'm on Instagram, JW the Movie Guy on Instagram. I'm on Facebook, JW the Movie Guy. There's a page. We also have the Indie Escape Network page. Like and subscribe. It doesn't take that much to do that for us. So if you could just do that, like and subscribe wherever you can find us, we would appreciate it. And it's also, it helps the show. And if you like the show and you want the show to succeed, we have the Indie Escape Facebook page. We also have the Indie Escape on YouTube. Wherever you're watching the show, we do shows that are backdated there as well. Also, we're trying some Instagram stuff tonight. We're also on the Loud and Nerdy pages as well. We're moving all around. We're doing all kinds. We're trying to do more and get out there and find you and whatever. I will be here tomorrow night with my good friends Jerry and Kyle. We'll be doing Loud and Nerdy. And we thank you for joining us tonight. We will not be on next week, and we can't talk about it really, but we won't be on next week. We will be on the 29th, and the 29th, the 29th is kind of a bittersweet moment for us. It's one of our favorite 80s movies. I forgot to get the poster for. Give me 1 second as we're holding this up. Give me 1 second. I have it. I will. I promise. But we're going to continue to do this fun stuff where we do movies we love and movies that have stood the test of time and are movies that we think people still love and and basically you know what I mean, like can look at and go, hey, these are movies I want to know what they think of it, or what their what their feelings the first time they saw it was. And I think one of those movies that has to be discussed in that regard is the movie we're doing on the 29th, and it's this little movie right here. She's a friend of the network, so we're going to see what we can do. Try to pull some strings. But Night of the Comet is what we're doing. One of the great 80s, unsung 80s action / girl power movies. And it's an amazing piece of sci-fi horror business that is entrenched. If you grew up watching 80s films, it's one of those 80s films that you probably didn't see in a theater, but you definitely caught it on HBO, or you caught it on Cinemax, or you caught it somewhere. And once you caught it, you taped it and you watched it over and over again, or you rented it. It's just one of those movies. It's got a great soundtrack. It's got a great plot. End of the world, comet, Halley's Comet-ish kind of stuff. And it's so much fun, and it's just one of those great movies. We will be back on the 29th to do that, and we may be able to talk about other stuff, secret stuff. But we'll see everybody next the 29th for Generation Movie. Loud Nerd will be on for the next 2 weeks. So thank you for joining us. Stay safe. Go see a movie. Twister's this week. I'm going to rewatch Twister, I think, because I haven't watched it since that bad DVD transfer in the 90s. So have a good week. We'll see everybody in the next 2 weeks. Bye.